Welcome back, everybody. It's, of course, Sport Federation TV every Friday night, where we talk about what's happening with sport in the Western Cape, across the 6 districts, and, of course, the various codes. Tonight, we've got a full range for you. We're going to be chatting with Jaco van Tonde. He's the Vice Chairperson of Bisley. We're going to speak to Michelle Moira de Villiers from Western Cape Equestrian. They've got a showing event coming up here pretty soon, and we're also going to be catching up with Sarah Brody, the president of Women's Golf South Africa. A lot of different developments there, but of course no stranger to Sport Federation TV is of course Western Cape Kickboxing. The president of Western Cape Kickboxing, Josh Cloete, joins me back on the line now. Josh, how are things there with you?
JP, thank you so much, and it's always good to be back on Western Cape TV. From the kickboxing side, we're all good. We ready to start with our competitions, and from that side, yeah, no, all is good from this side.
It's been a difficult 18, well, we keep thinking 18 months, but it's probably now more like 18 months. It's been a difficult 18 months, but you guys have managed to push through. Josh, it looks like your kickboxers are still training, they're still members, they're still going to their clubs. Things looking good for kickboxing.
Yes, JP, if I must take you back, last year, 2020, we were just finishing the Western Cape Championships and lockdown kicked in. So we were lucky to have our Western Cape Championships. And this year it looks like the regulations are going to allow us to have our 2021 Western Cape Championships as well, which will be taking place on the 2nd of October.
Josh, you're also the president of Kickboxing South Africa, so I'm going to take the liberty of asking you the question for a few seconds at least. How's kickboxing doing in the rest of the country? Is it as exciting as in the Western Cape? Are the athletes there training in the other provinces? Because we obviously know that they're going to have to come down to Western Cape at some stage to come and compete against the best fighters in the country.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, look, the Western Cape, we are proudly say is that we're currently the only kickboxing province that is affiliated with the provincial confederation, and also where all the districts received a government or the DKS funding.
Yeah.
So from the Western Cape side, that's very, very promising. We're doing very good in terms of that. But that is a kind of culture we need to take over now to the rest of the other provinces and districts of South African kickboxing. But to answer your question, yes, kickboxing in the entire South Africa is operating. Some of our districts already have some of the district championships. And now I'm talking about some districts in Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga. So the kickboxing throughout South Africa is going on. We've got districts that's very quiet in KwaZulu-Natal, but we are engaging with those members and try to get them on par with what's going on in the Western Cape and also what's going on in Gauteng.
I suppose there is an element that people don't realize, that as a kickboxer, you do in fact do most of your training in isolation. They maybe think of it as kickboxing, where you're punching and kicking each other, but the reality is the most of your training you're at a distance from each other. You're either skipping alone, or hitting the bag alone, or kicking the bag alone, or doing some weights or whatever. But most of your or shadow boxing, but most of your training as a kickboxer, you are actually separated from anybody else.
Yes, no, that is so. I mean, and also it is a very individual sport. Although there's people around you that support you to achieve, but yeah, the training of a kickboxer can be quite individually and isolated, and he or she will perform like a normal other athlete. And yes, and it's easy for us as kickboxers to have our training without being in contact with another athlete.
Yeah. And Josh, from a training point of view, do we still see athletes and clubs training in the old school manner a little bit, maybe? If we think about back in the day, if we look at things like boxing clubs and kickboxing clubs, quite often the students would arrive at the club, and before they did any training, they would go for a 5-kilometer run around the block.
Oh yes, look, kickboxing. You know, we have decided, many of the kickboxing clubs have decided to maintain the old school values, and of course, you know, you have your corporate kickboxing clubs that obviously doesn't understand that, but 80-90% of kickboxing clubs in South Africa, they're following still that route. In fact, when we do grading, part of the grading is to go and run a 2 or 5 kilometer before you actually start with your technical aspect of the grading.
Josh, let's talk a little bit about some of the events that are coming up. We know that you've got an event coming up in Overberg soon. Overberg district is, of course, one of your areas, and you've got a international champion, Ruan van Romberg, there. But you've also got an event here in Cape Town coming up quite soon.
Yes, look, we obviously encourage our events to start now. And yes, Overberg is one of our youngest and newest districts in the Western Cape. So we obviously support Ruan van Romberg in his process that side. And they are actually also growing now quite nicely. I've just spoken out to Rodney just a couple of minutes back, starting a club now in Predarsdorp. So Overberg is really growing now in terms of kickboxing numbers. So that's good for kickboxing in the Western Cape. And yeah, in Cape Town, Cape Town obviously being the most senior district of all the districts in the Western Cape. And one can refer to Cape Town Kickboxing District as the mother body or the mother of kickboxing in the Western Cape, for being the first district within the province.
Yeah.
So Cape Town Kickboxing, they're having their first event now after our lockdown on the 18th of September, and that takes place at the Vibrant Sports Studio in Ottery. And then it's also this year Cape Town Kickboxing, the district, the responsibility to host the Western Cape Kickboxing Championships, which will take place on the 2nd of October.
So you've got 2 events coming up then shortly in the Cape Town area, as well as another one in the Overberg area. So it's the 18th of September is your next big event. How many competitors, or just tell us about the type of competition?
The type of competition for the 18th of October, because we are also still very much cautious, the idea was to have it as a ring sports event. We will do it during the daytime in the form of a fight night, and we will not have more than 10 competitors competing.
And the 2nd of October, Josh?
So it will be the 2nd of October is the Western Cape Championships, which obviously take place within the Cape Town district. And what will happen with that district, with that championship, is that your categories will be divided into time frames, and when a category is finished, that people or that athletes will then move away from the competition area to make space for other competitors. So the categories, whether it is tatami sports, light contact, whether it's continuous fighting, whether it is semi-contact, whether it's ring sports, it will all be allocated time frames for competing. Yeah. And when that grouping are done, and then the grouping must then just remove themselves from the competition area in order to adhere to government COVID protocols.
Josh, we'll leave it at that. We look forward to catch up again soon. Looking forward again then to a catch up, as I say, in the week or two just before the Western Cape Champs, and then of course after, with lots of photographs and videos.
Absolutely, JP. Again, thank you so much for inviting us. And yes, kickboxing is kicking in the Western Cape. We here.
Kickboxing is kicking. There we go, folks. Josh Cloete, president of Western Cape Kickboxing, also incidentally president of Kickboxing South Africa, an Olympic code now, for those of you that didn't know. But yes, as he says, kickboxing is kicking in the Western Cape. I love that expression. They've got the Western Cape Championships coming up on the 2nd of October. They've got another event coming up on the 18th of October. And of course in the Overberg, also an Overberg championships. So lots of events and activities happening in kickboxing in the province. Of course, as we know, it's all being done according to the health and safety protocols that they've had approved through the government structures. Folks, we'll take an ad break now. When we come back, we'll carry on taking a look at sport in the province. Back in a sec.